cousin.
She's your cousin.
Yes.
Can you tell us what happened to her?
She got stabbed. She got into an altercation and got into a fight, and the other person stabbed her.
Who's the other person?
Just somebody that was a provoking energy in her life, you know. So that's all I can really say right now because it's an ongoing investigation. It was an altercation. They fought, and the other person stabbed my relative up, and she passed away. Tessa Turden was more than just a beautiful face. She was a visionary, a proud entrepreneur, actress, and the heart behind Pepper's Jamaican Belizean cuisine. She lit up every room with her energy and inspired women and children to dream bigger. She was a fighter, a giver, a creator, and above all, a mother whose love had no limits. Her legacy lives on through every life she touched, every soul she uplifted, and every bold move she made in a world that couldn't dim her light.
So first and foremost, I want to send condolences to Jolene's family. Not only is this, such a sad case, but finding out that this young woman was a mother is even more heartbreaking. And to think that someone would get to the point of taking a child's parent, a child's mother out of their life because they couldn't get their feelings of jealousy and envy under control is just so heartbreaking and disheartening. But nevertheless, to provide some context, I saw this story pop up about Jolene. And, she is a businesswoman, a successful businesswoman. She had a very successful restaurant. And also she was the jack of all trades. She was, I believe, a content creator, a social media personality. She was also interested in becoming an actress. Clearly she had so many different talents that she contributed to society and to her community. Now, listening to this beautiful woman's cousin, who was also beautiful, very beautiful family, hearing her cousin describe all of the talents that her cousin, her late cousin, contributed to her community and to her loved ones, it instantly made me think about an analysis I posted on my channel probably a little bit over a year ago at this point, titled, "Why Being the Jack of All Trades Ignites Jealousy." And when I saw this young woman and heard a little bit more about her story, it instantly made me think about that analysis. And another thing that actually stood out to me was the cousin sharing that the person who she ended up getting into an altercation with, her cousin described this individual as someone with a provoking energy. So I also posted an analysis some time ago on my channel, and I want to think that someone recently in a video, in one of my more recent analyses, one of you guys commented for me to elaborate on this point a little bit more about understanding why emotional regulation is so important and treating your responses to certain situations as if it's currency. But most importantly, ensuring that your currency is well spent. So your reaction currency, your response currency is well spent. So when you are someone who is the jack of all trades and you have someone in your life, and it may not be someone who you are intimately connected to, they may not be in your immediate circle, you may not work with them. But if you are someone who is a public figure, such as Jolene, she had a successful restaurant, clearly she had a social media presence, there might be someone looking at you from afar with a jealous and envious eye. So you have to be very, very careful, because they will orchestrate. I actually want to think this ties perfectly into another analysis that I recently posted titled Ambush on Arrival, where I was highlighting the young woman Chicago Hottie's instance on, I guess, Twitch or something, where they were streaming. The young women and young men came together to stream. And when she walked in, there was a girl who was taking jabs at her and manufactured really an issue with her from thin air. And I broke down in that analysis that a lot of the time this happens because that person is trying to ride off of your coattails in a backhanded manner. So because they don't have a line of communication with you, because they don't have connection with you, they will orchestrate one by creating a false narrative regarding you. So they will act like you did something that offended them. They may even start gossip about you to get your name and their name in the same sentence. So when you are someone who is in a prominent position, and prominent is subjective, you could be prominent in your workplace. You could be prominent, amongst your church, whatever. When you are someone who is prominent in your respective community, in your respective field, or you're exceptional at what you do, and rightfully so, your name starts to create a little bit of buzz. There may be someone on the outside looking in who is trying to find a way to infiltrate into your circle and gain access to your life with the sole purpose of tearing down everything that you've worked hard to build. So even though you may be an individual where, for one, because, making use of the talents that God has blessed you with is really a sign of spiritual stewardship. But another thing is, people think individuals just become jack of all trades overnight because they want to. No, some people become jacks of all trades because it's a requirement. They have mouths to feed. This young woman, this beautiful young woman, was a mother. So putting on those multiple hats may have been a requirement, paying it forward in regards to her loved ones, her community. And she was like, you know what? I have the drive, I have the know-how, and I'm willing to do whatever I have to do. I'm willing to work as hard as I have to work to make sure that myself and my family are good. So you have someone who is jealous and envious, and really when someone is operating with an envious spirit, they don't understand that they're actually acting out of a spirit of entitlement. You're watching them work hard and bend over backwards to make ends meet, and you're just thinking that, okay, if I get in and I sabotage, I'm going to get the same results. No, you got to get in the field and you have to put in the same amount of effort and time. So that's a conversation for another day. But the principle still remains, and that's why differentiating jealousy from envy is so important, and understanding the sequential process of, someone going from a state of jealousy to a state of envy. A person who is jealous is operating with that entitled state of like, I wanted to. But once they get to the point of no return and they're emotionally intoxicated, they reach that state of envy. And now it doesn't matter if they receive it. They just want to make sure that you don't keep succeeding and that you don't receive that goal that you're constantly trying to pursue and that you're working really, really hard to achieve. But another thing that I want to highlight, and this is essentially the foundation of this video today, the art of provocation. So I have an analysis where I broke this down. I think I actually have a few analyses where I talked about when you're dealing with someone who is trying to provoke you, you have to be exceptionally mindful and intentional about withholding your responses and your reactions. Because the quote unquote provoker always has a trick up their sleeve. They are reeling you into an altercation to justify what they plan to do to you. And 9 times out of 10, when you are dealing with a provoker, they're reeling you into 2 types of scenarios. The first is sabotage. Now, sabotage can look like trying to ruin your reputation with other people. It could be trying to sabotage you from accessing an opportunity that they know would be beneficial to you. Now, the second thing, and this is why understanding these sequences and these signs, especially these subtle signs. Now, clearly there are more overt cases of someone, coming at you or trying to put you in a compromising situation. But there are also very subtle instances that you have to be mindful of because it can lure you into your demise. But the second thing that's really common when you're dealing with this type of situation is someone attempting to put you in harm's way. And I feel like that was more so fitting with Jolene's case. And this is why understanding things like provocation, also understanding why emotional regulation and treating your responses as if it's currency is so important. Implementing these principles when you realize you are being provoked no longer becomes an option, but it becomes a requirement, especially as you start to become successful in your own right. And the reason why I'm constantly talking about, your response being currency and implementing this emotional regulation, especially in instances like this where you realize you are being provoked. The reason why I hone in on this point is because I come from a background, an environment, born and raised where confrontation was just a thing. And it didn't always have to be, like a physical altercation, but just being able to communicate with someone and someone communicate with you, I don't like you. And vice versa, you don't like me, and good. We're clear on that. Our people know, innocent bystanders know, like the line in the sand was always very clear. And it wasn't until a couple of years ago due to my professional endeavors that obviously I had to broaden my community and, broaden my scope as a result of me being in different environments and around different circles. And even though it was difficult for me to adjust because it was my first time being around people who would tell you one thing behind closed doors, and then once you get in front of a group, they tell a completely different narrative from what you all agree to. That was my first time ever experiencing something like that. So it definitely felt like a culture shock, and it was really difficult for me to adjust. And at first, I felt like it was a bad thing. Like, yo, I don't know why these people get down like this. And I was really, really interested in kind of like, okay, let me go back to what I'm used to. But now I'm in a state to where, and see, this is why you can't lean on your own understanding. Like when God says that, he means that. Now I'm in a state to where I understand the fact that, yes, that was a very uncomfortable time and season for me, but it was needed. And the reason why it was needed is because this is the harsh reality. Predatory personalities are not limited to the streets. Predatory personalities are not limited to the streets. Predatory personalities are also in professional sectors. And I needed to be exposed to the fact that, yes, you all can be seated at a table and you all have the same access to certain opportunities and resources, but because some people are just wired different, they're competitive, they're cutthroat, they will knock you off the board for the sake of getting themselves in a position. Sometimes people, they may have more than you, but they just don't like the idea of you potentially getting something, so they will knock you off the board. So me having that experience in real time and seeing like, oh, wait a minute, wait a minute. I needed to understand the fact that ideally, yes, you would want to have encounters with certain people to where it's clear communication and you all know what you are dealing with up front. Realistically, it doesn't always happen that way. Realistically, the cookie does not always crumble that way. So with that being said, it's important for you to understand emotional regulation because there are going to be some situations where someone may be watching the empire that you're building for yourself. It might be you and a partner. It might be an empire that you're building for your family. Someone may be watching that from afar. And because they are envying that empire, what they will do is they will provoke a negative reaction or response out of you to put you in legal harm's way. So that everything that you've worked hard to build comes crashing down at the blink of an eye. And now you don't have an empire, you don't have a legacy to show for your children. Or they will lure you into a physical altercation and you think that it's going to be a fair and square fight. But you don't know that they've come with all kind of weaponry in their arsenal to take you out of here. So understanding that implementing emotional regulation does not mean that you are cowering down. And this, I know this is really, really difficult because for people who may have had a similar background and upbringing to myself, and there's these certain codes of conduct and things like that where you're just I'm not going to let someone disrespect me. Trust me, I get it. I get where that principle is coming from, especially because in that environment, that is a form of your survival, making sure that people don't get comfortable with disrespecting you. Also in business, there are certain ways that you can assert yourself because, yes, someone disrespecting you in business is also a no-go. But there is a certain strategy that you have to implement to make sure that you're not being disrespected in business, but you're also not giving the other person wiggle room or a leeway to sabotage you. So everything is about method and strategy. So unfortunately, when you have attain success in your own right, or you're right at the brink of a breakthrough, you no longer have the luxury of popping off. You really don't. I know it's frustrating because people will try you on purpose. They will try you on purpose to get you in a compromising position. But you cannot give someone the satisfaction of sabotaging everything that you've worked hard to build simply because you didn't know how to perceive the game that they were playing against you. And understand long-term gratification rather than short-term gratification. So short-term gratification looks like you winning that argument or you slapping someone, right? You pulling up on someone and putting fear in them. That's short-term, but it may lead to some long-term consequences versus you allowing the short-term consequences to do its thing, but you still have long-term gratification of the fact that your empire is untouched. No one could come for your legacy because you refuse to give them that opportunity to sabotage it. So that's what's meant by like this metaphor of playing chess rather than checkers. Chess is all about long-term thinking, consequential thinking, being able to perceive the end of a result and not just focusing on what's happening in the now. So giving up that short-term gratification simply looks like you allowing them to have it. Let them have it. They can provoke, they can gossip, they can slander. And this is another thing, and I know that this is really, really hard for people, which is completely understandable. But you even have to let the people who joined that smear campaign bandwagon, you even have to let them go and not hold on to that. You let them naturally weed themselves out of your life because it's evident that they can't come with you to this next journey. They can't come with you to this next season. So not even fighting the current when it comes to people being impacted and swayed by this smear campaign and this gossip. Now, to caveat all the points that I've made in this analysis thus far, I'm going to read from the provoker envious archetype excerpt in the book, Green Eyes, to provide some context. The provoker. This is the individual who lives to provoke a response from their prey. Typically, the provoker aims to evoke negative responses from their targets. A negative response would validate them as they thrive whenever their prey appears to be disheveled, angry, distressed, sad, or depressed. As sadistic as it sounds, it is the harsh truth behind the provoker. With this envious person, you combat them by simply ignoring them. All right, babes, that's all that I have for this analysis today. I want to thank you all so much for tuning in. But of course, I want to hear you all's comments, opinions, perspectives, as well as personal experiences in the comment section below. I look forward to speaking to you guys in the next analysis, babes. Take care.